Joe Biden says the U.S. would intervene with military to defend Taiwan. The AP reports President Joe Biden said Monday the U.S. would intervene militarily if China were to invade Taiwan, declaring the commitment to protect the island is even stronger after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Quote, this I'm quoting the AP here, it was one of the most forceful presidential statements in support of Taiwan's self-governing in decades. Wow. Talk about strength from our leader, Joe Biden. It's fact so strong that Bloomberg reports Biden misspeaks on Taiwan, says U.S. military would intervene. Oh, you know what I love? They try to cover for him so much, they don't know which direction to go. So the AP is like, what a forceful statement. Like, no, he was gaffing. And then Bloomberg is like, he was misspeaking. Yo, he literally said one word, yes. He was asked, would the U.S. use military, intervene with the military to defend Taiwan from China? And Biden goes, yes. And then the reporter was like, really? Wow, yeah, okay. Everyone was surprised Joe Biden just came out and just said that, effectively ending multi-decade-long policy on how the U.S. approaches China and basically just telling China to go screw off. So, look, if someone who was cognitively functioning said yes, I'd be like, whoa. But I think what really happened is we know the U.S. does want to intervene with military in the event China invades Taiwan, but nobody's going to come out and say it. But, Joe Biden is sunsetting. So it's like it's getting late in the day and he's like, and then they say it and his filter's off. Yes. And then immediately an unnamed White House official walks it back saying, that's not true. We wouldn't do this. And we have the one China policy that hasn't changed. I see all this reporting coming from CNN and these reporters coming out being like, the White House actually says. And then I'm like, who? Mm-hmm. CNN comes out and covers for the president. It's not true. He didn't mean it. Bloomberg covers for the president saying he was misspeaking. And the AP covers for the president saying it was a truly forceful statement. Yeah, we're gaffing towards World War III and just...
It's almost like it's dangerous to have a... nice, by the way. It's almost like it's dangerous to have a president who's experiencing cognitive decline.
You know, I think there's only one way to bring this administration back, and that's for Joe Biden to become the first celebrity endorsement of Neuralink. Once that happens, then we can go forward. And of course, as much as I oppose pretty much everything that Elon Musk is about, aside from this free speech and the chicks, I think that... he would probably bring it back around if he could tweak the Neuralink to start making Biden say more ridiculous things than he does now. For instance, if he could have him turn to Nancy Pelosi and say that your hair looks like it smells so delicious.
Come on, man. I smelled Nancy's hair.
Gross.
But I agree. Like, if there's anybody who should get Neuralink, it's Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. He needs some kind. The uppers clearly aren't working anymore.
Maybe this is the kind of like the missing footage from Idiocracy. Before everything goes down, World War III wipes out all the rest of the smart people due to some ridiculous president.
No. We all get on Elon Musk's Starship and leave. It's like, how many people can that thing hold? Do we know?
No, I don't know anything about it.
No.
Starship?
Let's find
He's
out.
building that Starship for like a Mars colony or something.
You guys enjoy.
No.
Well, I mean, if the Earth is about to explode, yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking...
Mars has like, a third of Earth's gravity?
Oh, Mars can't sustain life.
That's what's that gonna do to people?
Underground. It's going to make their heads
underground,
really big.
yeah. Well, the issue is Mars, my understanding is, doesn't have an atmosphere. So we'd be living in domes. Like, Biodome, like with Pauly Shore. Remember that movie?
Oh, yeah. Steve Bannon worked on the original Biodome.
Really?
Like the real one?
Yep. Absolutely.
Like in the real world, not the Pauly Shore movie.
No, the real one in the real world.
Oh, okay.
It's fascinating.
I'll look that up.
I just saw an article about some sort of quantum telescopes that can check underground and like map the underground now, all the caverns and stuff. So maybe we'll do that on Mars. I was just thinking about Biden a couple days ago while I was back at my parents' house, kind of off the internet, thinking like, if you have a military commander that's incompetent or that's losing his mind or her mind, you need to replace them immediately with another form of command. Unfortunately, the president's a little awkward situation because it's not like a general. You're a commanding general. But I would be so much happier with Kamala Harris running the show right now because he's not stable.
No, she's an AI auto-predict text bot.
She really is.
I mean, it's funny because it's a joke because of like a few gaffes she's had. But when you really look at what she said, she's not speaking. It's like she sits down and I'm imagining what's going on in her head as she's being interviewed, and she's like, don't screw up, say words. You did it, those are words. And she's not actually telling anybody anything. She's like, as the vice president, you have to be vice presidential to be the vice president on a vice presidential mission for the vice president. And you're just like, okay, what?
We'll say what you want. The woman stands for freedom.
She does that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I was looking at
Have
the
you been waiting to use that one?
Yeah.
No.
All week.
It's the yeah. You're right. I wrote that a couple days ago. I was like, I hope I get to say this on Timcast.
I was looking at the Succession the other day, and one hard bout of COVID or maybe monkeypox at this point, and you would take out Biden, Pelosi, and I think it's Leahy, and then boom, you're left with Harris and Blinken. Imagine a world like that.
That's probably why they're so worried about every new thing that's popping up, because let's be real. Like COVID was primarily hitting older people. Mm-hmm. Even Bill Gates says so. So naturally, yeah, they were freaking out. It's probably why Nancy Pelosi was like, everyone's got to wear a mask no matter what, because she's in the affected group. I mean, what is she, 80?
Yeah, 80.
Yeah, that's like the highest bracket for COVID. So, and Joe Biden too. I mean, seriously though, look, we don't want anybody getting sick or anything, but like you can't freak out. Or I should put it this way. It goes to show why it is really dangerous to have these elderly
octogenarians.
Octogenarians.
Yeah, she's 82.
82.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just won't. They've like gripped onto power and they won't let it go.
They're like those things on ships' holes.
It's like Gollum.
Yeah.
Barnacles. They're old barnacles.
barnacles,
And we're
true.
stuck with them.
I'd imagine Congress is more like a bunch of Gollum from Lord of the Rings. They want the power. They won't give it up.
True.
They're all like, their teeth have fallen out and their hair's gone. I mean, I'm not kidding.
The comparison holds up.
It feels so intricately entrenched. Like, I'm very concerned about how to fix the situation with the United States, because I'm like, the corporations don't own us. We own corporations. The United States are people's sovereign. And people on Twitter are like, no, the corporations own us, Ian. And like, come on, purge the black pill. We can take control. But like, they're so entrenched, these 80-year-old billionaires or millionaires, with these people that are like Klaus. I don't know how tight Nancy Pelosi and Klaus Schwab are. I'm just using names right now. But people that are like multinational bankers are tight with these 80-year-old politicians, and they've been tight for like 30 years. How do you destroy or disrupt that web? How would you disrupt that web? Is it technological? Is this where the future of technology is headed?
That's a hard question to throw at me right away. How do you fix it all? Do you do it with technology?
Give us the answers, otherwise you have no credibility.
I have a answer, but I think that most of our solutions lie regionally, locally. I don't think that any mass movement is necessarily going to stop this corporate technocratic takeover that we've seen really arguably since the 60s. People put the date different places. And it does have such a momentum at this point that, to me, I think the notion of just stopping it like a train is pretty ridiculous. I think that the best options we have right now lie with ourselves. It's very unwise to look to a higher earthly power for salvation in this situation.
Yeah, well, I think the question is, how do we break it apart? I agree heavily that we need localized solutions. I think a big part of this is people looking after their own lives, their families. Obviously, it would be ideal to return power to more local levels, but then the question becomes, how do we break up the very strongly centralized power so that becomes more possible?
Antitrust. I mean, and that definitely has an impact, right? That slows the train. But when you're talking about, to me, I take a profoundly negative view of the wider possibilities of technology. I think that, in the end, technology is always about control, and conceivably it's about a human controlling nature, controlling society, controlling themselves. But that means that the vast swath of humankind is going to be subject to that control. And the desire for that power, the capabilities that we already have now, that you already see in Google, Facebook, Amazon, this already has momentum that you break them up. Great, you've at least diminished some of their power. But I think that ultimately, long view, we've got to go down the dark, dark tunnel before we get to the light.
You mean like ayahuasca journeys where people like see their inner demons and stuff?
It doesn't take ayahuasca for me to see the inner demons, but now that you mention it, we won't go there.
No,
it's bad for my brain.
I think culture building. So I've had a lot of conversations this past weekend. Was on a trip. Was in Austin, by the way. That was fun. Talked to a lot of cool people. And the one thing I think, I always come back to is you can build all the greatest tech in the world. You can vote whoever you want into power. None of that matters unless you have culture. So, we talk about the saying, I think it was Breitbart, politics is downstream from culture. Technology, I think, is as well. But technology, I don't think, is as important. I know you've said the inverse, Ian, before. But the issue is there exists alternative to Twitter. Nobody uses it. Mm-hmm. Why? It's cultural issues. People don't want to use alternatives. They want to be on the platform where everyone is. So if culture is everything. I'll put it that way. If we can start inspiring young people and say, these are the values that are good and that you should hold, everything else becomes secondary. As those kids age, everything else gets washed away with the new generation. So it really is about inspiring young people with good values is the most powerful and important thing you can do to fix these problems.
One of the things I noticed being out of town and on the road, I was just not tapped into the information. And it was like I realized the amount of information overload I've been exposed to in the last 2 years and how clear things started to get when I wasn't exposed to Twitter. And then even if I pulled up for 5 minutes, I start to feel this dark negativity, and I'd see a few people arguing and like, man, I'm going to have to withdraw that from my brain for a while. That might have something to do with the darkness, which actually isn't evil. Like, too much light will burn you. So you need to sometimes have no thought.
What was it? Jack Dorsey called Twitter the light of global consciousness. Very spiritual claim. He said that he was something to the effect he's happy to pass the torch of the light of global consciousness to Elon Musk. And this concept of Twitter being something mystical of that sort, I mean, that sits at the heart of transhumanism. But to me, you look at this argument people are having right now about free speech on Twitter, which I do think it's good that if we are going to be stuck in what James Poulos calls the cyborg vivarium, at least everyone gets a say. But it doesn't change the fact that we're still stuck in that cyborg vivarium, right? We're still in a digital surveillance system. We're in basically a 24/7 propaganda machine that's pouring all this ultimately irrelevant information into your brain and distracting you from what I think are the most important things, such as us here.
All this started with broadcast media. I mean, radio.
Absolutely.
Of course, the newspapers. Even before then, it was just, newspapers were weak. They weren't as strong, but they were the most influential medium. So they would write stuff, people would believe it. Then you get radio, they say it, people believe it. And then you get broadcast towers, television, the networks, they say it, people believe it. Now with the internet, nobody knows what to believe. I mean, the disinformation expert herself was sowing disinformation and now doesn't even I don't think Nina Jankowicz even truly understood exactly why people were mad at her, because she lives in a disinformation bubble herself. So I love it when people who don't do research accuse people who do of not knowing, the truth or reality, and everyone's accusing each other. There are very few people who can see more than others because they're trying. No one can see everything. So everybody's, we're all trying to figure things out. But I think at this point, the way technology is going, you're just going to think something's true. And you're not going to know who to believe or who to trust, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Did you guys hear the War of the Worlds 1938 radio drama?
Oh, yes.
Orson Welles.
I'm familiar with it, but I never actually listened to it.
It's pretty wild. It's awesome, actually. I was told that when that played on the radio, people actually thought it was real and that aliens were actually invading, and people killed themselves. Some people would come out looking for aliens.
True, though.
That was apocryphal, yeah.
It could have been.
I think that's like an urban
may
legend.
have been hyperbole.
Certainly, there was mass panic. I can remember when I was a young man, my grandfather told me that when the first dirigible, it was like a glowing golden dirigible, floated over this small town in Georgia, this woman went under her bed. She thought it was, the angels coming to end the world. And 2 or 3 days later, they found her there. They looked around for her. They found her there, and she was completely terrified. She didn't want to come out. These sorts of things, I mean, you look at the cargo cults, all these sorts of, you could say, atavistic misinterpretations of what technology really is. That's really common. With the Orson Welles story, though, I think it's just really hilarious.
Yeah, can you imagine if they just played Cloverfield on television today like it was a news broadcast without telling people it was a movie?
Well, the crazy thing is, when I was in Austin, I went to Waco. I actually went to Mount Carmel, where the site of the Waco massacre. And, with all due respect to the people who are running it, very nice woman, they did have fake news. They had the meme, what was his name, Chipman? The ATF guy who was there holding the picture of the burning church or whatever, which is not a real photograph. It's a meme mocking him. He was holding a piece of paper saying AMA or something, I don't know. And then someone photoshopped it to be him holding the site of, Mount Carmel massacre, Waco massacre. And they thought it was real. And so I was like, oh, actually, no, that's a meme just making fun of him. And they were like, oh, we didn't know that. So people, deepfakes very much are impacting people. And I don't mean deepfakes in the sense that they're intentionally misleading. Like, no wonder Snopes is fact-checking satire, because a lot of people just believe this stuff because they don't know what's true or what's false. It's fascinating because I think false information is a big problem. In fact, it is one of the biggest problems. And I would dare say that my entire career is an effort to try and debunk false information. The only problem is it's coming from corporate press with billions or trillions of dollars over, a decade or whatever, to just keep pumping out disinformation. Sometimes it feels like you're trying to knock down a skyscraper with a little hammer, a little ball peen hammer. You can't do it. It's not going to happen.
But
you need specialized tools.
What you can do, as you were talking about, you can cultivate spaces outside of it, which, we have those. I'm not necessarily saying the digital spaces, but that's part of it. But I think that at least half the country, if not more, is completely cynical about what comes out of the corporate press. And in those conversations on the ground, and also in the media, digital media space, I do see a real hope of people having some degree of anchoring or sanity in all of this madness.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.